And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your chilly Sunday here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So you notice I mixed things up in the office again here, and not by accident. Today marks, incredibly, 53 years since this film, this all-timer, this franchise starter, this superstar creating, global superstar, creating motion picture, Dirty Harry, on December 22nd, 1971, Don Siegel's iconic tale of a lone wolf San Francisco police inspector trying to solve a string of serial killings opened in theaters. Now, you would expect that this movie made a big splash when it opened with critics, because it's very controversial. Even now, people will be like, wow, they were allowed to make movies like this 53 years ago? Yeah. People said the same thing about another movie released the same week in 1971, Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Dirty Harry was very controversial right from the start. But you know what else it was? It was an enormous box office hit. This film, in its initial theatrical run, grossed 9 times its production and marketing cost. That is a significant amount of money. You think about today, if a movie, in terms of budget and marketing and all other ancillary situations, if a film cost $200 million total, that would mean that it grossed $1.8 billion. People went to see Dirty Harry. And then they went to see it again. But to get into, as I say, the guts, this is not just a script that if a great filmmaker, kind of underrated by history, and Don Siegel found, and a star who was primed to become the biggest movie star in the world. He was close. He wasn't quite there yet. But if I'm asked the question, who are the most important non-producer, non-actor, who are the most important filmmakers in Clint Eastwood's career, his life? Well, the answer comes at the very end of the credits of Clint's first Oscar-winning film as producer and director, 1992's Unforgiven, a movie which incredibly is now 32 and a half years old. But after the credits sprawl in Unforgiven, and the beautiful music, which Clint Eastwood also had a hand in producing the music of that, and he may have contributed a couple of themes, but Claudia's theme, that's the kind of main theme from Unforgiven. At the very end of the credits, there are 4 words, if you're still tuning in at the end of the credits of Unforgiven. You know what those 4 words were? For Sergio and Don. Sergio being the extraordinary Sergio Leone, answer to a trivia question, who is Quentin Tarantino's all-time favorite filmmaker, Sergio Leone. He did the Dollars trilogy with Clint. He also did Once Upon a Time in America, a film that's now 40 years old, with Mr. De Niro himself, Bobby D, James Woods, Joe Pesci, Treat Williams, Jennifer Connelly. Don Siegel is the guy who convinced Clint to go get his Directors Guild of America card, and I believe also his Producers Guild of America card. Don Siegel was a taskmaster. He was an organizational guy. That's usually not a good thing. He was a company man. He worked for Warner Brothers going back to the early 1940s. You know who did the title sequences for Casablanca? Another trivia question, Don Siegel. He was a montage maker, and quite a good one at that. He also did the original, and still the best, Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 56 with Kevin McCarthy. You're in danger! 15 years later, Don Siegel made this movie. But it's important to understand not only the political climate at the time, that certain words meant different things then than maybe they would mean now. Right now, if you say that someone is a professor of law at Berkeley, okay. You're a professor of law at Berkeley? No problem. In 1971, audiences were laughing or throwing shit at the screen or applauding silently. Now, it doesn't hit the same way. It doesn't mean the same thing to everybody, regardless of what side of the philosophical spectrum you're on. Saying that somebody is a judge who teaches at Berkeley in 1971, it hit different. Good, bad, and ugly ways. Speaking of Sergio Leone and Clint Eastwood. But Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood had already worked together with Don as filmmaker. I need to point that out 3 times. They did Coogan's Bluff, 2 Mules for Sister Sarah, The Beguiled. The Beguiled was, of course, remade a number of years ago by Sofia Coppola, and I believe Colin Farrell was in the lead. Wasn't as successful. It's a kind of movie where a star such as Clint Eastwood, you don't really do it very much now, was okay playing the heel, more or less playing the bad guy. Oh, for 70s cinema, right? Big stars playing amoral protagonists, breaking the law, doing their own thing. But they made those 3 movies together. And then Clint directed his first film as filmmaker, another trivia question, Play Misty for Me, which was what? Fatal Attraction before Fatal Attraction. Jessica Walter, who ended up being phenomenal on Arrested Development with Jason Bateman decades later, plays a woman who has a crush on a local disc jockey, Dave Garver, played by Clint Eastwood, and she keeps calling up, asking him to play Errol Garner's Misty for him. He takes requests, hence the title of the movie, Play Misty for Me. Once again, nail, meet, head. But Clint was nervous about directing his first film. He was 40 going on 41, already, as I say, a big star. He asked Don Siegel, would you be in the movie? I could find a role for you this way. I respect that. I respect that Clint, he's an alpha male. Take that for what it is. But he was okay asking for help. It was Don who talked him into it. And Don, if I fuck this up, you're going to have to get me out of it. So he cast Don Siegel in the role of the bartender, which is pretty fucking funny. Don Siegel had a kind of look. He could have been a character actor if he wasn't a filmmaker. But Clint's directorial debut went great. But understanding the relationship between these 2 guys sets up how this movie even came to being. There was a book written in, I think, 66 or 67 called Dead Right. I haven't read it. I know what the primary thrust of the story is. There's a San Francisco police detective. I don't think it had a serial killer angle, though. I don't think so. I hate to say it, but I'm pretty certain that the Zodiac killings are what tilted some of the screenplays in this particular direction. There's nothing wrong with that. You see it on Law & Order. They tried to rip from the headlines. So Don Siegel had made a number of somewhat successful films, as I say, with Clint. The Beguiled wasn't really a big hit, but Coogan's Bluff did well. 2 Mules for Sister Sarah turned a profit. And also, 2 Mules for Sister Sarah is a movie that Clint, a forward thinker, Clint is not antiquated. Even here he is, 94 years old. Toni Collette just shared some pictures of the 2 of them. Her last day of filming Juror Number 2, which I might add, is streaming on Max, along with the original Dirty Harry. If you have Max, you don't have to pay a premium for Juror Number 2. That's the new film that Clint is not in, but he directed. But Dirty Harry, there were a lot of screenplays that had been written, and Don Siegel had done a movie called Madigan with Richard Widmark not that long before. So he was, as I say, Coogan's Bluff had been a hit, 2 Mules for Sister Sarah. I'm sorry, where I was going with that was on 2 Mules for Sister Sarah. It was shot in Mexico. Clint did not want to take any chances of being hit with Montezuma's Revenge. So he had, I guess you could say this was diva behavior, but he billed himself, not the studio. He had fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh meat, and bottled water sent to the set. And he offered everybody, would you like? No, we're okay. Everyone but Clint Eastwood and the entire cast and crew of 2 Mules for Sister Sarah ended up in the crapper. And in the case of Shirley MacLaine, she could barely get out of the bathroom long enough to film her scenes. Clint, forward thinker, progressive thinker in 1970. He didn't want to get sick. Fuck this bullshit. I believe that Montezuma's revenge is real. I don't want to spend the entire experience of making this movie taking a shit. Almost literally what his thinking was. So Don and Clint were friends. And Don could crack the whip. As I say, he was a taskmaster. He was tough. But he loved Clint as an actor. And Clint was willing to go places. I mean, The Beguiled, you look at this, that's a pretty nervy role for somebody like Clint who's on the rise to take. Leonardo DiCaprio's People circled American Psycho a million years ago, almost took the role away from Christian Bale. I know they're doing a new one allegedly with Austin Butler. Don't do it, but they're going to do it anyway. But DiCaprio's People were nervous. He's on the rise. Does he really need to play a machete-wielding serial killer, an axe-murdering serial killer? Yeah, but I don't think he actually kills anybody. Shut up, that's not the point. Oh, it's all in his mind, maybe. Don't do it. But Leo, his people said, no, we don't need to do this. Clint did it. It could have theoretically hurt his career playing such a scumbag. He goes to an all-women's school, basically, and has sex with everyone there. Boom. Come all ye fair maids. That's what she said. So Don Siegel was looking for a project after he completed work on, I believe, The Beguiled. And he and Clint wanted to work together again, with Don directing, not Clint directing Don in a small role. So Don Siegel had heard of this Dead Right and the fact that Warner Brothers was attempting to make a project about a San Francisco, I think in the book he might be a detective, but we'll just say San Francisco homicide inspector. And I don't know if his name is Harry Callahan in the book. But Warner Brothers had commissioned a number of screenplays. This is something that, and it's not critically important, but the average film fan probably doesn't imagine that when, let's say, a literary property comes into the sphere of a major studio, that they don't simply hire one writer or the ultimate director of the film, because this is something that happens, to just write a script and then you go from there. You might have multiple writers taking multiple cracks at a script, all getting paid and paid well. And then the studio deciding, well, which one do we want to do? And sometimes the which one do we want to do depends on who gets selected to make the film and who are we going to try to get to star in the film. I know this is all logical, but unless somebody points it out, you might not think of it. You ever wonder why there are so many names listed when it says stuff like story by, based on a concept by, screenplay by? I love him. Sylvester Stallone's Cliffhanger has about 12 names. Watch the opening credits. You can do it right now. Go on YouTube. The opening credits of Cliffhanger. Count how many different people got story credit, including our guy, Sylvester Stallone, and Michael France, among a lot of other people. It's the way it goes. So Don Siegel called Warner Brothers. And I mentioned this if you saw the Terrence Malick podcast. I apologize for covering some of the same territory. But Don Siegel called Warner Brothers inquiring about, hey, I've been hearing about this Dead Right project. The idea of me directing Clint in an urban cop film is something that I would like to pursue. Do you have a screenplay for me to read? And I'm telling you that if it's good, I can get Clint. Well, Warner Brothers, I think he was talking to the president of production. I don't know, but Don Siegel didn't have to go through multiple layers and channels to talk to big shots over there. He called and they put him through to top management. They don't fuck around with a guy like that. Again, a company man. He'd already been working with Warner's for 30 years. So Don asks about, can I get a screenplay for that Dead Right project I'm hearing about? Now, Warner Brothers had already found their script for Dead Right. It had been retitled Dirty Harry, and the script was written by Terrence Malick, who at the time was not yet a filmmaker. He was just a brilliant kid who was known as the hot young writer. He didn't go the conventional route. This is where Terrence Malick and Steven Spielberg, there were a lot of parallels. You would think that Steven Spielberg went to film school. He didn't. He toyed with UCLA. Didn't last very long. You would think maybe that Terrence Malick went with George Lucas to UCLA, or went to USC, or Martin Scorsese, who went to NYU, or Brian De Palma, who went to Columbia. No. Terrence Malick went to Harvard. Terrence Malick was a Rhodes Scholar. They didn't know that he was going to be such an extraordinary filmmaker, but everyone in the business knew him. That's the kid from Harvard. That's the Rhodes Scholar. I love how he writes. He is phenomenal. So Terrence Malick's draft of what became Dirty Harry, which the title Dirty Harry is on it because I have a copy of it, or I had a copy before I moved. I didn't take it with me. I'm sorry. I got it when I was at NYU. Terrence Malick had written a draft, an adaptation, a more direct adaptation, for what I understand, of Harry Julian Fink's book, Dead Right. But it was now titled Dirty Harry. That's what Warner Brothers was supposed to send Don Siegel. But history and fate moved its huge hand. And Don Siegel was hand-delivered by courier, messenger. A guy was holding a little package. He brought Don Siegel. Is Mr. Siegel here? Wherever Siegel's offices were on the Warner backlot. I'm not sure exactly where his office was, but he probably would have had an office at Warner somewhere. They hand Don Siegel a script. Don Siegel reads the script, says Dirty Harry on the front, really likes it. He likes that it has a little Zodiac angle to it, more than a little. Has a Zodiac killer angle. The guy is called Scorpio, and the cop is tough, but he doesn't necessarily have a heart of gold, but he has a moral compass. If Harry Callahan is an antihero, and I think that's what he has to be considered, it's not for lack of moral compass. It's for lack of ability to play nicely in the sandbox with others, and for being willing to bend the rules. The more he gets fucked with, the more rules he's going to bend. Something in that spoke to Don Siegel. Even though if you want to use the word politically, Don Siegel was very left. And ironically, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was perceived at the time, and still in current theory, is considered to be an anti-communist film. Well, if you want to call aliens trying to take over the world, if you want to use the word communist, knock yourself out. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Because Sam Fuller's Pickup on South Street, starring the aforementioned Richard Widmark, that's also considered anti-communist. Sam Fuller was even further to the left politically than Don Siegel, if we know our history. But that doesn't really matter, because Don Siegel, to his last, always said, I did not set out to make a political film with either of my two most famous movies, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I'm telling a story about a fucking alien takeover. Everybody applying politics. Well, unfortunately, that's what people like me and what film historians do. Sorry to Don Siegel, a filmmaker I adore. And he says, Clint and I actually agreed. We knew that there was going to be an upheaval. There was going to be polarization with Dirty Harry. But we were making a movie about an honest cop who kept getting fucked. We're trying to make a political statement or even a philosophical statement. We leave that to everyone else. But Don Siegel read this screenplay that WB sent to him, and he loved it. And he called the president of production at Warner. I forgot who it was. Harry something or else? Bernard Donenfeld. It may have been, no, Bernard Donenfeld was with Paramount. I apologize. I don't know who the president of production was at Warner at the time. But Clint said, I want to do it. I'm gonna give the script to Clint. So he gives the script to Clint. Clint gets right back to him. Don, I'm in. I love this story. It's exciting. It's going to get people talking. If Warner wants to make a movie, I'm in. You're in. Let's go make a movie. So Don Siegel calls Warner and says, I got Clint. He's ready to go. We are so excited to make this movie. And Warner Brothers was legitimately, they're doing cartwheels. Because this was a property they really liked. They hired the genius young writer, Terrence Malick. My God, this is exactly the director that we would want for this kind of movie, and the star that we would want. Clint is 40. He'll be 41 on his next birthday. They are So not long after, Don Siegel gets something also delivered by courier, a list of proposed locations for the shoot. This is all normal, standard stuff. You don't think they just show up one day at a certain location and start shooting? Everything has to be mapped out in advance, because when you're shooting on location, streets need to be shut down, et cetera, et cetera. Now, certain things in Dirty Harry, especially the opening shootout, do I feel lucky, punk? Or do I feel lucky, will do you, punk, to be more precise. That was shot in the Warner's backlot. That's different. You don't need to set that up. You can have that whenever you 1 week notice. Okay, Don, you've got it. But you got to have locations ready to go. We're going to shoot here, these dates. We're going to shoot there, those dates, and so on down the line. So they send Don Siegel the list of locations. And when he looks at it, he knows something is wrong, because most of the locations do not match up with the script. So he, in his autobiography, a Siegel film, that's the name of the autobiography, came out not long before Don passed. He wasn't really that old. He died in 1991. He was in his 70s, but he called the president of production and he said, hey, I don't want to come off half-cocked here, but I got a problem with the, you just sent me the list of locations for Dirty Harry. Yeah, Don, what's the problem? 80% of these don't match up with the locations in the script I read. What's going on here? President of production says, well, hold on, Don, let me check this out. So he goes and consults the script. He says, it's spot on. I got the thing right here. Don Siegel's heart sinks. And he says to the president of production, let me ask you something. What's the name on that script? Who wrote the script that you're looking at? Guy goes, what the hell kind of question is that? Terrence Malick. Don Siegel starts laughing and says something to the effect of, you sent me the wrong script. You sent me a script by Dean Reesner, my friend. I thought that, are you telling me this is not what you meant to send me? Long story short, the two guys take turns yelling at each other because the president of production did not like the Dean Reesner script. I don't know that he read it, but the creative executives below him did not like it. It doesn't work. It's going to be too controversial. They flatly preferred the Terrence Malick version. Don, you want to at least read Malick's version? No. This is the movie that Clint and I are making. Take it or leave it. President of production says, I'm sorry, Don, we can't do it. Don Siegel says, well, then I wish you luck making this movie. Clint and I are out. You got 10 minutes to call me back. Words to that effect. Siegel hangs up the phone, and it's like Harrison Ford and Kate Capshaw in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You'll be back here in 5 minutes. Don starts looking at his watch. He said, this guy's going to call me back in less than a minute. Sure enough, phone rings. Don, you know what? You're right. This is ridiculous. I'm being crazy. I have you and Clint sign. You make your movie. But I hope you're right. Don't worry, we're going to make a good movie out of this. The script is better than you think. That is how Dirty Harry got started. A mistake in a fucking mailroom at Warner Brothers. They sent the wrong script. It was meant to be. It was fate. Because when you actually watch this film, see, there are movies, old movies, as I say, more than 5 decades old. There are old movies that, let's say that you're a young film fan, and in this instance, by young, I mean under 35. We'll say under 35. That you've heard of the movie, you understand, okay, Clint was presumably very young, and now he's this little old guy, and he's cute and all that. What will shock you about this film is how well it still plays. Even if some of the philosophical and political stuff, you'll be scratching your head, well, why was this controversial? Why are they reacting this way? This is one hell of a thriller. One of the first R-rated action thrillers. This movie is wall-to-wall violence. There's nothing nice and sweet and innocent because it's the early 70s. It's the free love era. Harry Callahan is pretty fucking brutal. This is the archetype for the Martin Riggs kind of maverick cop. The only difference between Harry Callahan and Martin Riggs, Harry Callahan's not suicidal. And I mentioned this in the Lethal Weapon episode, talking about it as a Christmas film. Shane Black, the writer of Lethal Weapon, I don't know that he ever actually came out and said, I was thinking of Harry Callahan when I wrote Martin Riggs. But Harry Callahan's wife, he's a widower. She has died in a traffic accident, a needless traffic accident. Do you remember how Martin Riggs' beloved Victoria Lynn died? She died in the exact same kind of traffic accident. Shane Black paying tribute to this, but also deliberately drawing parallels between Martin Riggs and Harry Callahan. Harry is not suicidal, but the job is his whole life. And Martin Riggs' job is the only reason he says he continues to live, but at least Martin Riggs has a home, lives on the beach, has like a little trailer, but he has a home. In the world of Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood's lead, San Francisco homicide inspector Harry Callahan, we never see him even go home. As far as we know, the man lives and sleeps and eats and shits and showers at police headquarters. That's a man consumed by his job. Now, the film proper is a Zodiac kind of story. There are a lot of parallels on purpose to the real case. And it is a bit of a wish fulfillment fantasy. And the movie Zodiac, which I'm confident that if you've gotten this far into this episode, you've already seen it. But David Fincher's film has a scene set at the premiere of Dirty Harry. Had the cooperation of the San Francisco Police Department. Dirty Harry opens with a plaque in tribute to the San Francisco police officers over time who lost their lives in the line of duty. Mark Ruffalo's Dave Toschi, the real life kind of inspiration for Harry Callahan. This version, not the Terrence Malick version, but the Dean Reisner script, mild inspiration for Harry Callahan would have been Dave Toschi. And he's at the premiere and he's not happy. As he says, people are dying. People have died and they're making movies about this shit. Wish fulfillment. An escape from reality. But Dirty Harry is about a serial killer who goes by Scorpio. Scorpio, Zodiac. He writes letters to the city of San Francisco. Okay, in real life, the Zodiac killer wrote letters to the San Francisco Chronicle. Cartoonist Robert Graysmith. And a columnist played so beautifully by Robert Downey Jr. I forgot the name of the columnist that he plays. Paul something or other. But in the world of this film, we as the audience know who the killer is. In the real Zodiac case, we think we know who ended up doing it, a man who also has been dead now for more than 3 decades, but they were never able to prove it. Spoiler alert. It's not really a spoiler. We were never able to prove to 100-degree certainty or 100% certainty who the killer was. In the world of Dirty Harry, it is a seek and destroy kind of story. Harry Callahan is tasked with figuring out what's going on with this serial killer. But he is told to play ball. And so you have this very controversial even now. If you watch this, again, you see some things that Callahan does, and you will say, I can't believe they did this in a movie in 1971. As people watching A Clockwork Orange for the first time also will be like, holy fuck. I can't believe Stanley Kubrick put this in a movie 53 years ago. Bravo. Didn't think they were allowed to do anything like that, even in an independent film or a film that he has autonomy to make the movie he wants. And Don Siegel was allowed to just make his movie. But Harry Callahan, in a famous extended sequence, the Scorpio killer kidnaps a 14-year-old girl and says, I want $200,000 or else the girl is going to die of slow suffocation. Now, Harry Callahan has had enough experience to know she's already dead. The kid is not alive. I give you almost A guarantee. She's dead already. He even says, you know she's dead, don't you? So what Harry Callahan would want to do, his playbook is simple. He wants to just go find this guy. He's okay with killing him, but he's got to find this guy, and let's at least find out where the girl is so we give her a proper burial. The girl is dead. Don't kid yourself. We're not going to find a girl still alive. He probably raped her and left her in a hole to die. That part's probably true. She's somewhere. Let me just meet with the son of a bitch. No. Just play ball. So at the expense of almost his partner's life and almost his life, Harry plays ball. And it's an incredibly tense, suspenseful, elongated sequence of him being bounced all over San Francisco. 20-some years later, Morgan Freeman in Along Came a Spider, it is beat for beat where he is bounced around on the phone by the killer. That was a pretty good movie. It had some interesting twists and turns. Julia Roberts kind of sound alike. Monica Potter, you close your eyes, Monica Potter and Julia sound like the same voice. Has a good role in that film. I enjoyed that. It wasn't as good as Kiss the Girls, but I liked Along Came a Spider. But Clint tries to follow the rules, even though he is a bit of a maverick and iconoclast, and he's already gotten into hot water by a lot of gray area sort of stuff. But he makes a turn at a certain point in this movie where he knows that the only way that this can end, either that guy is going to kill me or I'm going to kill him. And Clint's performance, which is in his top 5 finest, there are moments of anger. But to me, and it's some of the finest film acting in Clint's entire career, it's when we find out late in the movie, when he's visiting his partner and his partner's wife, and they have a few minutes of just confab, catching up, how you feeling? How are you doing? We find out that Harry Callahan is a widower. And it's a character that we only see in this one scene, and that's Chico Gonzalez, his partner, played really well by Rennie Santoni. It's his wife that is walking Clint back to his car. Harry's back to his car. And we learn that he is a widower. And the actress, I don't know her name, who plays the wife, is really good. Just in this one moment, in this one scene, when she realizes, oh my God, this young man is a widower. She puts her hand over her mouth and almost reaches her other hand out to put her hand on him to say, oh my God, please forgive me. And Clint says, he puts her at ease. Oh, it's okay. And then he explains. She was driving home late one night and a drunk crossed the center line. There was no reason for it, really. And then she asks another question, because he says, it's okay that Chico is quitting. The implication being the guy is, maybe he's 30. This is no life for the two of you. Let him do something else. And at the end of the scene, she says, why do you still do it then? And Clint just says, I don't know. I really don't. But the implication is he has nothing else. And it's very, very sad, because we don't know what Clint and his wife, what they wanted for their future. Did they want to have a family? Did he imagine only working for another 5 years and taking early retirement? We don't know. We just know that this guy probably was not like this before she died. Now this is what we get. An angry man, not above bending the law when he sees fit, come hell or high water. And so the movie turns into mano a mano, and we know that it's going to end with one guy or the other guy getting killed. And given the fact that Clint didn't survive all of the movies that he made in the 60s, well, maybe they'll really go that far, because a lot of other big hitters fail. Spoiler alert, Warren Beatty. Spoiler alert, Jack Nicholson. The good guys didn't always win in the 70s. It was a very pessimistic time. Sound familiar? Stop me if you've heard this before, right? Dirty Harry, to me, is a masterpiece. It is brilliantly acted across the board. Andrew Robinson as Scorpio, amazing. John Vernon as the mayor, great. But at the center, it's Clint Eastwood Jr. driving the bus, almost literally in one scene. He's actually on top of a bus, but giving everything he's got, fully committed to the role. And Clint performs a stunt in this movie that the studio told him he couldn't do. Maverick, iconoclast, the man from El Paso. There will never be another. There'll be no one like Clint going forward. Actor, producer, director. He's a unicorn. But there's a moment in the film, and Clint talked about it at the time. This doesn't work with a stuntman. You have to let me do this stunt, Don. I don't give a shit if I get hurt. It must be done. So, I mentioned mano y mano. Scorpio hijacks a bus full of kids, and he wants a fueled plane ready for an escape, presumably to Europe at the airport. You fuck with me, and I start killing kids. They want Clint to try to intercept him, but do it in a kind of lawful way. And Clint basically says, you get yourself another delivery boy. Oh, it's that he wanted money. And Clint knows the guy's full of shit. So he apparently just quits on the spot. He's given a direct order, and he is basically telling the mayor, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Get yourself another delivery boy. So we don't see this, but Clint drives to the Larkspur train trestle. Harry drives to the Larkspur train trestle. And as the bus is passing on its way to the airport, he jumps onto the bus. You can see that it's Clint doing the stunt, and the effect is thrilling. If it's a stunt man, it takes you out of the fiction, but it's really him. It's really Harry. And the movie climaxes. I won't spoil the ending, but it ends the only way it can. It ends with a brilliant callback to the opening shootout on the Warner Brothers backlot, with the immortal line of, you got to ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? Early in the movie, when Clint delivers that line to a bank robber, he's mocking him. He's being snarky. He's smiling. At the end of the movie, he's just enraged. Because he tried to do things the right way. He got fucked at every turn. He had to get dirty. And his nickname already is Dirty Harry as the film opens. But we see it. He has to get dirty. He's okay with it. He makes his peace with himself. And the ending of this movie is one of the great endings in the history of cinema. I won't spoil the last few shots. But I will say, Clint, consummate professional, did not want, spoiler alert, he didn't want to have Harry Callahan throw his badge into the water at the end of the film. He thought it was a mistake. Well, I don't like the idea that he's quitting, Don. So he's not, no, he's not quitting. It just shows his frustration with everything that happened. It didn't have to go this way. He could have stopped this guy sooner. Less people would have died. I don't like that he's quitting. I don't want to do it. So they argue, and finally it comes time to shoot the scene. Right before they're ready to shoot, the lighting is almost ready. Clint has a change of heart. He says, Don, I'll do it. Do what? What do you mean? I'll throw the badge away. Don Siegel pretends to be angry, starts barking at Clint. You bleepity bleep. If I knew that you were even thinking of throwing your badge, I would have had the prop master bring us 15. You know the badge you have in your pocket? That's the only one we have. Because somebody said, no way in hell am I throwing my badge away. You got one take to do it right, or every one of us is going to have to come back here at the same time tomorrow. You're going to put this movie over budget and over schedule. You got one take to get it right, Clint. Let's fucking go. Are you surprised that Clint Eastwood nailed the first and only take? Because I'm not. Because Clint Eastwood's entire career tells you, even just as an actor, as a filmmaker, when the going gets tough, he's standing tall. Clint Eastwood crushes that final take, the looks on his face, as he tries to wrestle with what he's done, what he should do, what is his life going to be going forward. Is anybody going to come after him? Am I going to get charged with anything? I don't give a fuck. I know I did the right thing here. Let the chips fall where they may. All of these things, presumably, what he's thinking about. Now, this movie, in part because it was such an enormous financial success, spawned 4 sequels of varying quality. The first sequel, Magnum Force from 73, is pretty good. The next sequel, The Enforcer, I see what they were trying to do. They had some laughs because his partner is a woman, and it's just okay. The fourth film, Sudden Impact, made a ton of money. That's the movie with Go Ahead, Make My Day. I don't really like it that much. The fifth film, The Deadpool, I like a lot. And a big reason why I like it, there's 3 major players in supporting roles, people who were on the rise, who ended up having incredible careers. One of which was an Oscar nominee, Patricia Clarkson, a great actress. A great actress. Another is Liam Neeson, who was rising like a fucking bullet train at that time. And Liam and Clint have a lot of great scenes together. You know, big guys, both of them. The third and most famous is Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey as Johnny Squares knocks it out of the park. Not a comedic role, but Jim Carrey already showed that he had an edgy capability to his film acting. He didn't just have to play a clown. But Dirty Harry, a masterpiece. One of the handful of movies which started the change in the movie business, where big stars could play amoral or morally, ethically ambiguous characters in major studio films with big budgets and bring in the business. Because they all did it. Beatty, Redford, Hoffman, Hackman, Scheider, Bronson. All did it. They all made these kinds of movies where the protagonists were maybe not necessarily rootable, but relatable, understandable. French Connection came out same year, ended up winning Best Picture. Dirty Harry's a better film. A Clockwork Orange is a better film. Spoiler alert, it's better. And I love The French Connection, but the 2 films I just mentioned are better. And if you ask me, is Clint better in Dirty Harry than Hackman is in The French Connection? Yeah. Yeah, Gene Hackman's a better actor than Clint. You know, his buddy, they worked together a couple of times. Absolute Power and Unforgiven. And Hackman always said how much he loved working with Clint. Clint in Dirty Harry is an undersold, brilliant performance by a guy who was a terrific film actor, even if he didn't have the range of a Laurence Olivier. Dirty Harry, the franchise starter, the OG, released on this day, 1971, directed by underrated Don Siegel, and starring Clint Eastwood, John Vernon, Rennie Santoni, Andrew Robinson, John Larch, and a number of terrific supporting actors of the era. This has been episode 386 of 388. 386 was a microchip of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday evening with me here in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already. Oh, I just remembered. Oh, I apologize for spoiling the ending. I had temporarily forgotten the name of the actor who plays Lieutenant Bressler. That's the right-hand man. He's the only superior that is sympathetic to Clint in this film, Harry Gardino. He is phenomenal in this movie. It is a great performance, and in another year, Harry Gardino could have gotten a Best Supporting Actor nomination. Sorry. But if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.